Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Let us start, not lose any time. My name is János Kertész. I'm supposed to be the moderator of this breakout activity. And this is Chiara Bodrini, whom you already know from the plenary. Welcome at this breakout. We are going to have the following program here. Of course, this is meant to have a totally open discussion about the topic of AI and polarization. But in order to ignite this discussion, we thought that there could be some very short introductions. And let me share my screen, if I may, to start with a short introduction. I hope you can see my screen. Can you? Yes, very good. Okay, so Chiara and myself have organized this. Kalina Boncheva was also supposed to participate, but unfortunately she got ill, so she couldn't. Well, this is about polarization, and when I speak about polarization, I mainly mean political polarization, though, of course, this can be also used in other contexts. I should say that polarization is not everywhere there. For example, in North Korea, there is no polarization because everybody has the same opinion as this person. But we think that diversity of opinions and views is very important for democracy. It is a social asset which is necessary for the evolution of the society. And here you can see an example of such a diverse opinion. This is some abstract opinion scale where there is a strong central part, but some people have some extreme opinions. And contrary to this, there could be a totally different picture of diverse opinions, like shown here, which is the case of strong polarization, where, where there is almost no possibility for interaction between these extreme groups. And political science agrees on that political polarization is bad. Why? Because a polarized society is difficult to mobilize for common goals. Such a society is vulnerable to populist demagogy, and this is a kind of vicious spiral, because the demagogy enhances then polarization and so on. Polarization penetrates all aspects of life and adversely affects general well-being. Families break apart, friendships are broken, and so on. And polarized society is full of stress and frustration, leading to permanent frictions and, in worst case, to violence. Well, we are interested in AI and polarization. And of course, one field where this is very apparent is online social media. Algorithmic bias, we have heard about that, leading or strengthening echo chambers. The bots, which have now swarms on the social media and which are fake news spreaders. And there are paid trolls commenting news and blogs and so on, following an AI suggested strategy in order to support a political side. Another field related to that can be simulated society, where AI is used to design strategies to dominate public discourse and manipulate public opinion. And of course, all these activities are based on data, on our digital footprints, on analysis of texts, and so on. AI and polarization is a challenge for science, for us. This is basically the usual race between good guys and bad guys, where the bad guys have always the advantage not to be forced to keep the law. And the question is how to develop AI to damp polarization. What are the expectations of political science towards AI in the fight against polarization? And on the other hand, what are the technical challenges for AI to make it more efficient in this fight? Is cooperation between social science and AI developers necessary and possible to achieve breakthrough in this field? And last but not least, can we expect progress from explainable AI in this context? So this is just an introduction, as I said, and I would like to ask now Federico Vegetti first, and then Taha Yassari and Chiara Boldrini to give us very short views so that the discussion can roll on. Fede, please.
Hello, everyone. I will share my screen.
Let me stop my screen sharing.
So I will ask you to tell me if you see me switching slides, because does it change or does it remain on the first slide?
No,
sorry for this.
It doesn't show yet. It is
okay. Now, do you see now?
No, I just see two squares.
Ah, interesting.
It is dark.
That's very interesting. Yeah, because I already have some history of presenting on Zoom and having some issues with.
Okay, maybe you can stick to this.
Yeah.
Because
this view here, do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna say just a couple of points that I think emerged a bit from reading some of the literature, reading some of the expectations about like the relationship with AI and polarization that are being played out in this context. So basically, there are mainly two areas where I see a very strong relationship between artificial intelligence and polarization. First of all, we're talking about people's life on social media, which is the biggest, let's say, the biggest environment where AI plays a role in defining humans' interaction and also defining the information that people are confronted to. And so the main topic that is usually discussed is the presence of echo chambers or filter bubbles. Another topic, though, that I think it's more important based on the results of current research has more to do with the type of content that people get shown, especially with the emotionally charged content. I will make my points, first of all, about the echo chambers and filter bubbles. Well, the idea here is that social media platforms create communities of people who are very similar to each other, so allow people to break the boundaries of their own, like, let's say, community in real life, their physical community, to get in touch with people who are closer to them. And this is a very old concern from the beginning of I guess, when the internet became something popular. And well, the idea is that by creating these clusters of people who are very similar, social media platforms would not allow like real exchange of ideas between groups, because everyone will be talking with like-minded people, and everyone will have the same idea. So this is something that actually there is not much evidence for this process taking place on social media. At the aggregate level, there is quite a lot of evidence. There are clusters But these are usually, or at least one interpretation for this is that these are mostly due to very few users that guide most of the traffic when it gets to information spread within communities. Actually, the little evidence that we have looking at individual level data shows a few processes by which actually social media make people more exposed to heterogeneous information. For instance, on social media, people are more in touch with what are called the weak ties. So they're not the strong ties in the family. People are closer to people, but they're more exposed to people that they don't see that often. And this makes them more exposed to information that they wouldn't normally get. Or there's all this inadvertency, thesis, by which people get inadvertently exposed to information shared by their friends, even though this is not what really they're looking for. Another point is that AI would make this process even worse by suggesting people information that already conforms with their own interest or expectations, so the content is more relevant to them. However, again, there is some evidence that this occurs at the aggregate level, but looking at the individual level, these effects seem to be pretty small. So for instance, all the search engine bias on Google seems not to be really taking place based on users' profile. And also, well, there's one paper published on Science by people working at Facebook that they show, yes, there is a tendency to create filter bubbles, but this is a very small effect that I can find. So basically, what we can tell from the literature that we see now is that people information diets are even more diverse thanks to social media. And of course, algorithms have an effect in reducing them, but it's a really small effect. One point here that I think it's important to make, because we're talking about polarization in one sense, which is something that should not be increased by the fact that people are more exposed to more diverse information. So people do not get more extreme in their ideas due to social media, because they do not they're not exposed only to the same type of information, so they don't get more polarized, more radical in this way. However, the fact that they're being exposed to more diverse information might increase another type of polarization, which is affective polarization. Affective polarization is not something to do about extremity of ideas, but has something to do about like in-group, out-group dynamics. So very high hostility and distrust towards people who belong to the out-group. So the increased exposure to counterattitudinal information on social media probably can also reduce ideological polarization, can reduce the extremism of ideas, but is likely to increase affective polarization. This is due to some features of social media platforms that tend to make a lot of things more political in a way. So for instance, there's a much stronger correlation of political and social identities, and who follows meme pages knows what I'm talking about, because it's full of political memes that do a lot of kind of social stereotyping. The clickbait is a problem. So pages, even newspapers, like on social media, they always bring up these titles, these headlines that are very inflammatory, because they want to maximize the number of people who clicks on their page. And also social media platforms tend to maximize the spread of this content. This due to a number of psychological mechanisms that I will not enter now, just to produce some of these negative effects. So for instance, creation of negative stereotypes. There are increasingly distorted perception of outgroups. What does it mean? That for instance, a Democrat citizen in the US will think that the Republican citizen, the average Republican, is much more different from him or from her than it actually is, because of this creation of social stereotypes. And of course, all the belief in false information, fake news, conspiracy theories, and so on. So basically, my point here is that what individual evidence shows is that there is not really a problem of what information people are exposed to. People are not necessarily exposed to more homogeneous type of information. It's actually quite the contrary. They're exposed to more the diverse information. The problem is that this is increasing affective polarization rather than ideological polarization. This is also something that AI plays a role, because AI tends to reward the triggering content, the content that maximizing engagement, or I mean, everything that maximizes people clicking through, or people in general commenting or sharing content. I'm thinking of Facebook, but even like I'm thinking of some other, like Twitter has a similar logic. So the problem is really not the homogeneity of information that people are exposed to, is really the quality. The highly emotional content is more problematic because it's triggering affective polarization. So the idea is that training algorithms should work in this sense. So in rewarding, for instance, content that is more like high quality information, instead of just information that maximize engagement, or type of some piece of information that show a different type of the disagreement, not a heated disagreement, but something that is more reason-based.
Okay.
This is
Thank you very much, Fede. Thank you. This is a very good summary with some interesting aspects, new aspects. I should say that, of course, everybody is welcome to raise her or his hand, and I will then give over the word. This should be a discussion. Yeah, I would like to make a comment then, take the word to myself, which is just a reference to a paper by Santola, who published some time ago a paper on the effect of algorithms on echo chambers, and he arrived at a similar conclusion that it does not enhance the echo chambers, but he also pointed out that the reason for that is that the sample they used, they made experiments, and in that experiment the participants were rather equal, which does not reflect the composition of usual echo chambers and communities on social networks, where there are opinion leaders and important persons. And if you take that also into account, then the situation can be reverted. Okay, having said that, and if there is no other person to make a comment here, I would like, hey, there is, Khan, please.
Yeah, so thank you for the talk. It was pretty nice. I actually like this part which you said, that it's not the echo rooms that marginalize people, but the voices which comes from other echo rooms to my room that marginalize me. So it's yeah, I think so. If this polarization is needed to be reduced, or we want to make it go away, then it's not that. It's not about people around me or in my room, but it's about kind of this. So this is kind of the old topic of the humans as well, right? So this fear of the others, and so it's basically this which marginalizes people. So it's basically this which needs to be tackled upon, and yeah. So this was my
Thank you. Okay, let us listen to Taha, who has a summary from another angle. Yeah, so this is the title you can read, so I don't read it. Taha, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, the question that the homework that Janusz gave me was, what are the largest technological challenges for AI in fighting polarization? Let me just start by showing these three images and make a little point that we mostly these days talk about polarization in the context of social media, which is fair play. But one thing that we should remember is that, of course, polarization is not limited to social media. Social media are one of those few examples where we can see and visualize polarization very easily and very well. We might want to, and we might need to go a bit deeper when we discuss about polarization and AI. But anyway, that's just a little introductory note. To the question of how AI could help and what are the challenges, I took this actually from Feda's presentation. I think it was his last recommendation that we should train algorithms to reward high quality content and reason-based disagreement. That sounds fascinating and very good proposition. However, to check the feasibility of that, I just want to bring some examples. The other proposition that we hear very often is to use positive algorithmic bias. You know, we can ask AI to break the bubble by showing us things that we wouldn't see otherwise, or things that we disagree with. That also sounds fascinating as a proposition. I'm going to also talk a little bit about that. But back to content moderation, using AI to do content moderation. Some of you know, earlier this year, Twitter introduced a new platform called Birdwatch. It's a parallel platform to Twitter, where a community of users could do fact-checking and basically fight misinformation, which is very much connected to polarization. It was released in January, and it took less than a month to see that this system somehow doesn't work. Even humans who are committed to the cause and they are very well experienced users could not agree on a very simple fact-checking task collaboratively. So I brought this up, and there was no AI involved here, but it is a very difficult task to control the content or to quality check material, even for humans. And we have learned that if something is difficult for humans, it would be also very difficult for machines. So just a question mark here, this could be a challenge. When it comes to positive algorithmic bias, using AI to break the bubble proactively, just two papers here. A reminder of a Chris Bale paper from, I think, 2018, where they used robots to expose Twitter users to opinion from the opposing party. Okay, to Republicans, they showed Democratic content and compared them to a control group. And at the end of the month, they realized that people who received content from the opposing opinion were more extreme in their own opinion. So that didn't work. Showing me what other people think might actually make me more extreme in my opinion. This is at the individual level, and at the network level. We published a paper last year in Mathematical Sociology where we showed that as long as we have homophily, as long as we have interest in connecting to similar people, no matter how much positive algorithmic bias we use, echo chambers would form inevitably. So mathematically, at least, it's impossible to use AI as a positive algorithmic bias to break the bubbles. So these two approaches are top-down, using AI as a tool from the top to manipulate what is going on in the society. The other proposition would be, why not using AI within the society? We can use agents to live and to hang around with humans and help them to bring them together, to break the bubbles, to mix them up. That sounds also fascinating. However, it has its own challenges. I'm not going to talk about AI aversion. It's a big topic and we are all familiar with. Not everyone is willing to interact with AI anyway. But even among people who interact with AI, there have been numerous experiments, most notably this one here, where they showed that when people are told, when people know that they're interacting with an automated agent, the level of cooperation reduces. People start defeating, people start cheating, basically. I saw a paper this week, and that's very interesting as well, in another experiment where people had to contribute to a common cause, as well as AI or as well as robots. They saw that there is very little appreciation for robots. In these experiments, the level of contribution was the same from humans and robots. When the team was successful, people gave much more credit to human fellows. And when they failed, they give even more credit to the humans as opposed to the robots. And in all these cases, the bench line should be the same level of credit to both. But we are quite racist when it comes to collaboration with agents. We prefer humans much more than robots. Even worse is this paper, where they show that actually we are very good at exploiting robots. In series of experiments, people had to collaborate with other humans and robots, and they started defeating them, cheating and exploiting those machines compared to similar situation where they had to work with humans. So as a summary, what I'm saying here is that most of the challenges that AI has to deal with in fighting polarization are not really technological per se. They are related to humans and how we behave and how we can adopt and adapt to an AI-infused social system. So if the problem is societal, I believe the solution has to be societal as well. Just a shameless plug, a little comment we wrote with Philip Mensa earlier this year, where we suggest that to fight polarization, maybe we should rely less on technology and go back to community-based solutions. But again, that's not the answer to the technological challenges that AI has to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Taha. This was very interesting, not very encouraging, I should say. But we can try to think further. And I would like to encourage the participants to express your views on these issues. Andrea, please.
So hi, and thank you once again for the very nice introduction and presentation. So my question is twofold. So on one side, the question incentives social media platforms have for switching to different algorithms. So for adopting different mechanisms that use a different perspective instead of using, as you said, the maximal throughput for I don't know, whatever the social media platform is using. And on the other side is how to incentivize, once again, social media platform in adopting algorithm that foster diversification. So maybe in this way we can design a mechanism that push on the side of the big companies to adopt this kind of algorithm.
Yeah, Taha, can you say something?
Yes, I mean, that's a very good question, but I don't want to be the most pessimistic person in the room. But even if we are, my question would be that even if you're in that ideal scenario that people can choose the algorithms, there are a bunch of series of algorithms, we still don't know what algorithm would do the job for us. You know, we don't know what sort of algorithm would help us to bring people together. Simple approaches like showing opposite opinion or showing a more diverse set of, as Feder also mentioned, showing a more diverse news diets. These are not necessarily going to solve the problem. So even if we have the infrastructure and if we have this prototype to have a class of algorithms to diversify, we don't know if that would be enough. I don't know if that answers the...
This brings me to one of my questions I listed earlier, which is a kind of combination of the social and technological parts, namely, what if we would try to change radically the environment in which these platforms operate? Because as Taha said, we are users. We don't really know what happens, and this brings me to the question whether explainable AI could be a step forward in the direction of how to introduce algorithms and interaction with people such that we can have more control and that would then lead also to a more balanced situation.
Well, just a quick comment on, so go on, Kira.
No, please go on.
There have been, again, experiments, you are absolutely right, Janusz, where when people were explained how an algorithm works, people were more inclined to delegate to them and to trust them. So that definitely helps.
Yeah, Chiara, please.
Yeah, I was going to spoil a bit my slides in the sense
please,
that
please. Of course you are welcome.
No, because I had a slide on the decentralized AI. So now we are talking about basically centralized systems. So in a sense, they are very difficult to, it's very difficult to see what's inside them and to incentivize them. Because I mean, it's Facebook, they do what they want. But on the other hand, there are just a few. So from a certain standpoint, it's much more easy to control this kind of systems. So if we move towards the centralized AI, where we have AI agents on our devices, on smartphones, and we cooperate in a decentralized way, what would happen in that case? So I think Taha raised a very good point. So do we know, assuming that we can be like our Facebook, we can do whatever we want, do we know what's the right thing to do? I'm not sure that we have an answer for that.
Tommaso, please.
Thank you. No, that was a really interesting discussion, and I want to sort of build on something that Federico said in his presentation. I also think that the problem that we are talking about has a lot to do with the kind of incentives that platform and platform infrastructure have, and those incentives are all based on the attention economy that is sort of the main business model of these platforms. So until that business model is the dominant one, so until public discussion and public debate is basically paid for by advertisement, I think it's very difficult to introduce like successful solution or considerable solution, because whatever we ask the algorithm to maximize, be it the diversity of exposure or be it sort of the mainstream. Now a lot of platforms actually move toward pushing mainstream contents rather than fringe one, and that's not necessarily good for public debate either, because the point is precisely what are the technical infrastructure for collective debate and how they are set up, and what these old infrastructure try to do is pay themselves through capturing and reselling the attention of the user, which is a very different objective from that of pursuing or promoting meaningful public debate. So I think that's the kind of the elephant in the room. It's not only about EA, it's really about the business model of these platforms.
Yes, I think this is very much in harmony with what Taha said, that the solution is social mainly, because this is of course a social aspect.
Political, I'd say.
Yes. Chiara, would you be so kind as showing you some of your slides?
Yeah, sure. Can you see them?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what I'm proposing to do with my contribution is to take a step back. So I wanted to mention one area of research that has been very, very active in the last decades, actually, because when we talk about polarization, basically we are talking about how we make up our mind, how we form our opinions. And in the literature, there are a lot of models that try to capture these aspects. These are theoretical models, mathematical models, and there are a ton coming from very diverse disciplines like sociology, economy, control theory. The problem is, even without AI in the picture, we had a lot of hypotheses. For example, so we share common interests with friends, or we are not very comfortable when our friends have opinions different from us. But these mechanisms and these models are often not supported, not backed up by real experiments that show that they are actually able to capture how people form their opinion. So the problem is that now we are adding a third element in this challenge, which is AI. Maybe if we are positive, we can think that, okay, AI with a lot of data, very effective algorithms, maybe AI can help us in understanding how we form our opinions. Maybe with explainable models, we will be able to underline, to detect some mechanisms that are not that we are not aware as of now. But if we want to be a bit more negative, actually we are changing the system that we are studying, because if you put AI into the picture, you are changing the ecosystem that you are studying. So how is it interfering with our natural way of forming our opinions? And as we were discussing before, this interference, even if done with the best of intentions, so for example, to rebalance our information diet, it can all backfire. So maybe we expose to left-wing people to right-wing ideas, but then they become actually much more radicalized and polarized than before. So what should we do? Not to mention even the fact that if we put AI into the picture, then we have to change our theoretical model to reflect the behavior of AI. And in some cases, it's easy in the sense that it's doable. For example, fetal bubbles can be captured pretty easily. But what if these AI systems are dynamic and adapt to the changes in their environment? This really becomes a mess from the modeling standpoint. And finally, this is what I was mentioning earlier. When we go towards the centralized AI, it might become even more complex, because now we were discussing, okay, these big platforms, they are making money by capturing our attention. We know, in a sense, their business models, so maybe we can come up with a solution. But if we have a completely decentralized systems with AI that are not controlled by Facebook or Google or whatever, but they are completely distributed in the environment, so what would happen? Is it easier to have, let's say, less intense polarization, or the fact that maybe you have thousands of Russian bots that are mixed with real people? This will be basically a complete mess, totally out of control. I don't know the answer, actually. And so, just to conclude, as we were discussing before, most of these issues are not requiring a technological solution, but a social solution, if we want. So people from social scientists should be involved, like Laura was saying at the beginning. So this is crucial, but also we should probably start thinking in terms of causal inference. So because we are assuming some cause-effect relationships of which we are not certain, actually. So there has been a study that says that if you study a social network, if you observe it, you are not actually able to distinguish between homophily or contagion. So I have a certain idea because my friends influence me, or just because, or I'm friend with these people because we share the same idea. So this is a game changer to understand that. And obviously ethics. So is it ethic to expose to opinions that are very different? So should we expose pro-vaxxers to anti-vax ideas just to balance their information diet? Not sure, but this is difficult to answer from a purely technological standpoint.
Thank you, Chiara. This is very useful, very interesting. I just want to make a comment on the Russian bots. Because of course the Russian bots are centralized.
Now they are, yeah.
they follow a central command, but it's difficult to identify this. This is true. Yeah. Yeah. Any comment or remark? So to me, it seems that there is a kind of agreement that first of all, it is not so much the trivial enhancement of sorry, the trivial enhancement of echo chambers by algorithmic bias which matters. It is more the quality that I found very interesting in Fadi's talk, that the quality, the emotions which really enhance polarization. But I don't want to speak instead of him. He is raising his hand. Please, Fede.
So I wanted just to make a couple of comments on Chiara's presentation,
Sure.
like just to conversate with it a bit. So one point that I found, like I like the fact that you put this diversity question in ethical terms, right? Is it ethical to show people very diverse information? You made the example of the Novak's information, for instance. But indeed, it's interesting because sometimes very diverse information triggers negative emotions to people, which is not good for them. I don't know if it happened. I guess it happens to everyone that sometimes, I don't know, in the morning you wake up, you're in a good mood, you go on social media, you see a couple of news or, I don't know, comments to some political post, and then you get angry and you remain angry for a couple of hours. So in these terms, sometimes actually I think it's an incentive of the platforms to show content that is very different, like very heterogeneous from the informational bubble that people have, exactly because this is what makes people to stay there and to comment and to increase again the engagement. And this is another point of your presentation when you say that we don't have much, at least there's not much research on the social behavioral models that are behind those who develop these platforms. I remember once reading an article of, it was an opinion piece of this guy that said that basically social media platforms work like the Skinner cage. So the Skinner cage was this cage where, I mean, this was like, I think 1960s behaviorism. And they put rats in a cage and they instructed the rats that if they push the right button, they would get the food. If they push another button, they would get an electrical shock or something like that. So this was the school of thought was behaviorists. Behaviorists did not care what was going on inside of people's mind, and even not about the physiology. It was about input and output. And social media platforms are built in this way. So they saw, for instance, that when people see the notification light popping up, they are more likely to engage in a different way. So they run a lot of A/B tests just to see what makes people engage more, without even considering what is the effect that this can have for people's own well-being, for instance, or even for the type of behavior that people have. But they do have access for this data because they know how to measure people's feelings. They know how to measure based on the word that they choose when they write comments. I mean, there are a bunch of papers that they show how you can predict whether people will do something very bad based on their social media activity. I mean, they're not so extreme, but there is a way to predict people's mood based on social media activity. So they could actually use this type of information to somehow moderate what they see. So if somebody is clearly like in a very angry mood or very anxious mood, perhaps try to avoid showing some content or show maybe some other content. So I don't know if this is it's probably a patch more than an actual solution, but I was thinking that they have all this information, they just have to put it together in a way if they really want to improve.
Very interesting idea. Okay, thank you, Fede. Yeah, so it is not so easy to summarize, but what I see is that the conclusion is perhaps that the problem is mostly social, we should change in order to reduce polarization, which is an accepted goal. We should change perhaps our models in which we behave. And although Chiara pointed out the dangers which are related to distributed AI, or decentralized AI, I would say that it's worth trying, perhaps, especially if this goes hand in hand with explainable, more transparent algorithms, which could lead to a new model of interacting on the internet as compared to our online social behavior, and perhaps this could be a better way of doing it. I think we are running out of time. I don't know, Chiara, this is more like
we were
more or less
supposed
the end of it.
yeah.
I would like to thank you very much for participating, especially those who prepared some presentation and those who contributed with their opinions. And we are going to try to do some summary with Chiara, and see you back in the plenary.